I want you to listen to something that President Trump said about China and about this possible coming conflagration, economic conflagration with China.
China wants to make a deal. They just don't know how quite to go about it. You know, it's one of those things they don't know how quite. They're proud people. And President Xi's a proud man. I know him very well. And they don't know quite how to go about it, but they'll figure it out.
Ashley, John, is this becoming a battle of wills between Trump and Xi?
I mean, first of all, I think it's interesting. There were a number of times this week where he seemed to be basically pleading with the Chinese to give him a call. President Xi's a friend of mine. He's a really smart guy. I know they want a deal. The Chinese are not calling. They're not picking up the phone. And I thought also interesting to hear him talk about how the Chinese are proud people. And at the same time this week, we saw J.D. Vance refer to the Chinese as peasants. You know, we're buying things that Chinese peasants are making so that they can buy our treasuries. I don't know how that squares with talking to a proud people, but I think it's, you know, he desperately wants a deal with China. And right now, China is not interested in a deal.
China's continued to retaliate, too. I mean, they've said over and over again, don't retaliate from the U.S. side, and China has. Also, it's an interesting negotiation tactic. From the U.S. as well as China accounts, there's little evidence that there were actually any calls, steps to meaningfully negotiate before these tariffs went into place.
What you're suggesting is that he's been waiting forever to impose tariffs on China, and regardless of conditions, impose tariffs on China?
I think that might be more than suggesting. But
yeah. No, but so again, go to this question of blinking. Mm-hmm. Who do you think blinks first?
I have no idea. I mean, I don't think Trump knows. I don't think China knows. I think they're both.
Well, Xi is not facing midterm elections in 2026 because he's never facing elections.
I mean, I think Trump is going to try to withstand this for as long as he can, but there is going to be a lot of pressure, especially with consumer prices, as Zolan mentioned. You know, the two economies are interconnected, and there are going to be major repercussions in the coming weeks.
And this is going to hurt the Chinese. I mean, this is going to hurt the Chinese economy.
Sure.
I mean, arguably more than it's going to hurt our economy. But again, you referred to the fact Xi does not need to worry about midterm elections or his own re-election or his own. I mean, you know,
the Chinese have been through worse periods of economic hard times.
Yeah.
And this is also why the markets didn't suddenly completely settle after Trump backtracked on Wednesday, because the markets are sort of saying, we don't necessarily think anyone is going to blink sufficiently quickly.
And it's important to say he backtracked. It was a total reversal, for sure. But it still leaves in place the largest, one of the largest tax increases that we have ever seen, the largest tariffs on China in more than 100 years. I mean, we're still in a place with 10% on every nation around the world and, you know, 145% tariffs on China. This is not a full backtrack.
And the big question of uncertainty, it still leaves in place, too, because we saw in the campaign, he talked about across-the-board tariffs, and then it went from across-the-board to reciprocal, and then some combination of the two, and now they're making deals with countries that we don't know how it's going to turn out.
Look, I was planning on doing another 2 hours on Smoot-Hawley, but I got to pivot to a couple other subjects. I'm sure we'll be coming back to this. Two important things, possibly incipient constitutional crisis over whether a particular deportee to El Salvador is going to be returned. Can you give us the state of play right now?
Sure. The Supreme Court basically came down and directed the administration to take steps to return this specific deportee, a Maryland man who, just it's worth reminding folks, was deported, and the U.S. had found that he had some legal status. The administration admitted in a court order that it was an administrative error to remove that man as well. So the courts have said that they want the administration to take steps to return him. That deadline, the administration was directed today to outline what those steps would be to return that person, and they said essentially that they want more time. They want to report back until next week. So you still have this fight ongoing that has had legal experts worried that we could be getting closer to a constitutional crisis.
Ashley, Trumpologist. Is he that's your new title.
I'm hoping for a PhD in Trumpology.
PhD in Trumpology, senior Trumpologist. Do you think he would ever openly defy the Supreme Court? Are we heading there?
I think we're certainly heading there. If you look at his comments and you look at the comments of his vice president, the Overton window has shifted, and there is talk about impeaching or floating the idea of impeaching judges if you don't like their rulings. His administration, in many ways, has already started to defy judges. It is worth noting he still speaks with a lot of respect for the Supreme Court.
Just a couple minutes ago, too.
Just-
He actually
yeah,
got off
yeah.
Air Force One and said, if the Supreme Court were to tell me to return somebody, I would.
But he also
We'll see
believes
how
the
they do.
Supreme Court are my justices, his justices. So who knows how he'll speak of his justices if they repeatedly defy him.
I don't think he would, but I know there are people around him that would encourage him to. And also, I mean, frankly, look at the reaction to this ruling. You know, Stephen Miller was basically acting like it said something different. I mean, this was clearly a defeat for the administration. He said it was a victory for the administration.
John, let me go to one more subject. It's a subject that makes me feel a little yippy. It's these executive orders that are targeting individuals who have been critical, individuals and law firms, obviously, that have been critical of President Trump. This week, Miles Taylor, former Homeland Security, Chris Krebs, the former head of the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, were targeted very personally for investigation and the implication of prosecution. This is what, I mean, this is the most remarkable part of the Chris Krebs executive order to me. It stated, Krebs, through CISA, the cybersecurity agency, falsely and baselessly denied that the 2020 election was rigged and stolen, including by inappropriately and categorically dismissing widespread election malfeasance and serious vulnerabilities with voting machines. This executive order is saying Chris Krebs should be investigated because he says that I lost the 2020 election. Donald Trump lost the 2020 election.
Chris Krebs did something very important after the election. He said clearly this was a secure election. The election was not stolen. And now he finds himself an executive order from the President of the United States directing the Justice Department to investigate him. That in of itself, no matter what the issue would be, is an extraordinary moment.
Right. Tarini, I'll end with you. I mean, give us, frame this out a little bit. I mean, this seems like we've entered a new phase where he's going to potentially prosecute former officials of his administration for saying that he lost in 2020. That's, we're heading into Orwellian territory.
That is definitely a step farther than we've seen him go with, law firms that he's also been, waging a retribution campaign against. So this is definitely a step further.
Right. I'm sure we're going to come back to that subject next week, but we're going to have to leave it there. I want to thank our guests for joining me, and thank you at home for watching us.